Hello everyone, a warm welcome to this session today on how to improve your verbal score from a low V30 to let's say 40 plus on GMAT. I'm Piyush and I'm going to be a host today. I still see people are joining in, so I would just wait for a few people to join in. And in the meantime, a very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all of you who have joined the session live. I would request you guys if you can quickly let me know if my audio is fine to you. Just making sure that I'm actually using a new mic today. I've used it on a couple of other occasions, but just want to make sure that you guys are able to hear me fine, loud and clear. So if you're able to hear me loud and clear, do let me know that very, very quickly, and we can get started accordingly. And do tell me about yourself very quickly. Where are you from? What kind of target score are you aiming for? What stage of your GMAT prep are you in today? So just to get some sense about your current skills, I just want to hear about that from you guys. So do let me know, guys, like what is your current skill level, and accordingly, and basically take up and move forward with the session. So yes, if you can hear me loud and clear, please let me know that. I still don't see any comments, guys. It will be great to know that before we proceed. I would also try to check it in parallel. Basically, okay, the voice is fine. Aditi says, "Thank you so much, Aditi. You have been an angel. Like everyone else has been very, very quiet. I don't want this session to be this quiet, guys. I want you guys to participate. I want you guys to interact. And I'm actually gonna take a very different viewpoint in this session. Generally, in my session, I act as an expert, like who knows everything, and I get into like, okay, this is what you should do, this is what you should not do, and all of that. Today, I'm going to basically talk a lot about myself as well. Now, why so? Let me tell you why. I'm not someone who was naturally good. I'm not someone who has scored a 800 on GMAT. I'm not someone who has scored a verbal 51. I was not a native speaker of the language. Verbal was never my strength. Quant was. Verbal was a very, very big problem for me, and actually went through the grind. I struggled for 6 whole months, like 6 whole months of rigorous prep. And even after that, I was not even able to get a stable score in verbal. The score used to fluctuate a lot from here, then there. All those kind of things happened with me. So, despite all of that, I could cut through the chaos, look through, take some time out, retrospect, understand what is going wrong, and I was able to improve my score to a verbal 41, and I was able to score a 740 on my first ever attempt on GMAT. So I'm not someone who was naturally good. I had to fight my way through to get a good score on GMAT. So I thought, let's talk about me. Let's talk about my journey. And not just my journey, but obviously I'll talk about your action plan and a lot of other things that you should be doing in order to improve your score. But I will focus more on me as a student. What are the mistakes that I made? How I realized, how I overcame those problems. And I will be including some of the important lessons that I give to my students. All right. So let's get started on that note. So this is going to be a really interesting session, a very different viewpoint over things. Thank you so much, people, for letting me know. Mayank says we can hear you. All right, I'm taking GMAT day after tomorrow. Any quick tips for V40 class? I would not recommend any quick tips for the time being because like just 2 days from now you have the test. So just do what you're doing. Don't try to change things. I won't recommend to change things even if I want to give you some tips. So let's get going in the session, guys, without any further ado. And just to give you some inspiration, guys, just like this session that you guys are attending today, just a year back, almost around the same time, around June, July, Rishabh was another student who was attending one of these sessions on GMAT Prep YouTube channel, taking time. And at that point of time, this guy had already prepared for GMAT extensively using two courses that you can see on your screen, Magoshan, GMAT. He had spent a lot of time working on this, and he was working in the finance sector in a very hectic investment banking similar to role, and with very, very long hours. Even after that, even after putting in all the effort, he was stuck at a 670 with a verbal 34 after all the effort that like putting in all the long hours, after that studying and all. And he was able to improve his score to a 740 with a verbal 41 in just 20 days. Like after this session, he was able to improve, take inputs on the session and actually get going. He has gotten selected into Kellogg in CIAD. He's joining in CIAD this year, and really proud of him. And why I shared this story was, if you are also someone who has been kind of losing hope with respect to GMAT verbal, that okay, this is something which you are not able to tackle, don't lose hope, guys. You still have time. You can still really, really do well on the test if you follow the right things that need to be done. So without any further ado, let's get going. So I'll talk about some important things. I have actually structured the session into this part. So we'll talk about the core problem. We're going to spend a lot of time on that. And then we'll talk about the score plateau. How do you overcome the score plateau? Then how do you master that solution? We'll talk about the solution. Then how do you master that solution, put it into practice? And then we'll talk about the timing strategy and ensuring consistency on the same, basically. So very quick intro about what we do at GMATWhiz, and then we get into the core problem identification part. So we are world's only truly personalized course, and when we say personalized, we actually mean that through the tech that we have developed, we pioneered the entire idea of personalization and actually creating an adaptive course. So every student on GMATWhiz gets a personalized study plan to work with. Which means that they have a proper target list for every week. They don't have to worry about, okay, what do they do on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Saturday or a Sunday. They have all the things lined up for them based on where they are weak or strong. And how they perform is basically always taken into account to give them the course access. So basically, you have real-time improvement modules in the course. As you perform on the platform, the course changes, and every one of our GMAT student gets a dedicated mentor, someone whom they can connect with every 15 days to connect and understand whether they are headed in the right direction or not, if they can, what kind of focus they should have on different sections, whether you should take the mocks or not, when should they take the GMAT. So this kind of discussions happen with your mentors. And that's why we have been GMAT Club's most effective course. If you look at the average score improvement, this is data till 2021 end, and you can see that average score improvement of GMAT students has been much, much higher than some of the other courses in the world. So in case you want to check out our services, you can definitely get in touch with us. You can also check out the services using this link. So that was just a quick overview about what we do. Now let's get into the core problem. Okay. Now, on an average, I speak to at least 5 to 7 students on a daily basis, and I'm talking about fresh students, new students. Now, I come across a lot of common issues when I speak to them, and I'll take some examples today. But before I get into that, you guys tell me, like, you are here, there are 78 people I see live attending this session. So what are the problems that you guys are facing with your verbal section? Do tell me that in the chat. I see it's saying I have a 40 plus in marks, but it fluctuates. Okay. What about others? What kind of problems are you guys facing with your verbal right now? Just want to hear from you, basically, first of all. All right, and let's keep this interactive, as interactive as possible, guys. So I would wait to hear from you guys. Let's talk, hear from you first. What are the problems that you guys are facing with your verbal? All right, I start seeing some comments. Started seeing some comments now. So Ashish says I'm actually having issues with my timing or accuracy. Then I have a comment from Abhiram who says fluctuating scores, tough times completing the section. Omkar says I blank out after solving 15 to 20 questions. Okay. Sivani also says my score fluctuates. Ashish also says I black out during season. Okay. Identifying modifiers, speed, etc. Stuck at a verbal 34. I don't know how to move on. Timing issues, right? Timing, Aramya says, staff says timing is an issue. Aditi also says the same. So timing is a very common issue that I hear. In fact, when I speak to students, I come across a lot of people who talk about different things, basically, different issues. And I'm going to talk about some of them. So basically, I hear this a lot. I'm not sure, none of you have mentioned this over here, but I'm pretty confident that many of you would have thought of this yourself. Many of you would have iterated this to your own self, that I have studied everything in verbal that was possible. And I probably know everything. I know all the concepts. I know everything. I just feel that I need more practice and mocks, basically. And I've heard this from people who have solved 20,000 plus questions and taken 20 plus mocks, official, Manhattan, all sort of mocks that you can think about. And they're still struggling out of verbal 24. And what I'm trying to tell you over here is that these are real problems. These are real problems. If any one of you feels this, point number 1, which I've shared on the screen, do say a yes in the chat. I would get to know that you are also facing this problem. Common problem I hear from students. I just want to do more practice questions, and I think I will just turn around everything from there. Many people come to me and say, I can actually solve questions accurately without time limit, but I can't solve it in just 2 minutes. It's not possible for me. So I see Abhiram and Aditi saying yes. So they agree with that point number 1. They also feel that same. But he also has joined in. So yes, this is a common thing, right? We think, okay, more practice. And that's how I used to think when I was a student. I remember it's so verbal was a big trouble for me, and I'm gonna get into the depth of it. And I was practicing. Sometimes course are good, sometimes are not. And I used to feel that if all I had more time, I could probably get the questions right. And I felt that, okay, if I am struggling with unfamiliar genres, it's like, for example, I was an engineer, so I had no clue about social sciences. I had no formal education in philosophy or economics for that matter. So I felt that, okay, if I do more passages, I can probably do well. I can probably do well in that case. And that's something which I kept on doing for a long time without seeing a huge return on that investment that I was doing, the time that I was spending. Some people ask to solve LSAT passages also, like on different topics. Many people do this. Many people come and tell me this issues as well. Some people get stuck in the last two choices. Some people think anxiety is the problem. They are actually doing well. It is just that anxiety is actually creating trouble for them in the entire test. So these are some of the common issues which people face. And I have actually felt most of this when I was a student. If I go back to my early GMAT preparation days, I'll just try to recollect why and how I actually started my prep. And please, guys, try to relate with me. And the reason I'm doing this all is to kind of help you understand that what are the problems that we face and why is that we face those problems. Because in most of the cases, people are not really sure what they need to do. Tell me, like, I'm just asking this question, open question to all of you. There are about 70 plus of you who are there in this session to understand how to improve your score. Now, let me know how many of you have a clear path of action that this is exactly what I should do. If I do these steps, if I follow these steps, I'll improve my verbal score. How many of you are confident about that? How many of you know what is the next step that you need to take? Would like to hear from you. Just yes, no. If you are confident, you know exactly what is the problem, you know how to work on it, just say a yes. If you don't have an idea about what's going wrong with your verbal, you have no clue, say a no. Let's see some yes nos. I would at least require 15 votes to kind of move forward. Okay, it says no. Stuck in multiple action plans is what Aditi says. So I'm assuming, Aditi, that's a no. You're not really sure, you're not really clear what you need to do. Okay, Prashant joins in with a no as well. Abhiram says, I've looked for many steps, but nothing works for me. Okay. Aramya says no. Gaurav says yes. So Gaurav has a clear idea. That's really great to know, Gaurav. I'm very happy that you know that. Vidhi says no. Saf says my only step is to take more questions. Yes, that's one of the common things, right? Most people just think that, okay, if I do just more questions, that's probably what's going to help me improve. But in how many cases does that really happen? So I have a lot of more vote coming in. Rambo, Rachel, both are saying no. So I think I have about 10 votes now. So that's good to see. So most of you, out of those people who responded, most of you said that you don't have a clue. And that's what my situation was after preparing. So when I started, actually, so obviously, when as a student you start, you kind of have your kind of thought process in mind ingrained from school. So again, if you are from India or from as a non-native speaker, generally how we look at sentence correction is that we kind of consider sentence correction similar to grammar. That's what we think, that okay, so sentence correction is basically grammar, right? That's what most people think, that okay, we have to learn grammar, and if we learn grammar, we do well on sentence correction. That was exactly what my thought process was. So I remember I actually bought this book, Ren and Martin, which was something which we used to kind of like have in our school days to learn grammar. And I thought, okay, let's learn grammar. And I remember I started learning various concepts like simple, complex, compound sentences, adverbs of place, time, quantity. But the problem was not learning rules. The problem started when I started learning exceptions to those rules. And then there were exceptions to those exceptions as well. And then in the end, I actually, after 2 months, I memorized, like, I knew thousands of rules. Like, I tried to memorize them. The problem was, I remembered only a few. I tried to memorize a lot, but I remembered only a few, and my score was still inconsistent. Now, some of you might have started with Manhattan, some of you might have started with the book I said, some of you might have started with a different book, some of you might have started with online courses. But that's how we look at grammar. That's how we look at SC. We think it's grammar, right, at the end of the day. And if you think that your thought process is going to change, if it doesn't change, then your scores won't change significantly. You need to understand that. My typical learning curve for sentence correction was, okay, I learned all these concepts that you see on your screen. The good thing was I was doing a good job at learning. I was doing a good job at learning. Whenever I was solving questions which were at the end of this chapter, this specific chapter like subject, verb, or tenses, I was doing well. No doubt I was doing well. But the moment I moved on to like 700 level questions, I I ended up making a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes I ended up making. Now, this is something which happens with many, many people. Now, let me ask you a question. Again, as I said, I want this to be very interactive, guys. So let me ask you a question. Now, if I was able to get the individual questions correct after each chapter, this data point, what does this indicate? If I was able to almost get every question correct at the end of an individual chapter, what I need to say is, let's say I learned tenses from the book, and I'm actually now solving questions which was at the end of tenses. Okay, so now I'm able to get most of the questions correct on tenses, which is on in that chapter, right? What does this indicate? What does this tell you? And I'm asking all these questions to basically help you understand a few things about your own self, which sometimes you don't understand, sometimes you don't introspect, basically. Small things, but really matters. What do you think does it tell you, basically, if you are getting questions related to a specific topic correct after doing that topic? What does that tell you? You know the rules of tenses? Okay, Saf, good, thank you so much. Saf says, I know the rules of tenses, that's fine. What about others, guys? It might sound like a very simple question, but it's very important for you to understand this. So I'm getting those questions correct at the end of the chapter. And mind it, I'm not getting those questions like when I'm not sure which topic the question is from, I'm not putting them right. You know the concepts, okay? Remembering a topic at hand for that moment, very valid point, Aditi. I'm very happy to see that. Aditya says you can't apply multiple concepts at once. Okay, that's good to see, Aditya. Thank you so much. Good in that topic is what Ashutosh says, but couldn't apply them all together. Okay, so let me tell you guys what does this really mean. So if I'm learning verb tenses and I'm actually solving questions on verb tenses, this tells me two things. Number one, I'm a good learner. I'm someone who, if taught properly, can actually learn those things. So I just learned verb tenses. I was able to implement the idea of verb tenses right away. If I was not a good learner, I would not be able to implement that idea right away either. I would score poorly over there. That's number one that we can learn. Number two, probably the reason I scored well in that and not the 700 level questions was that probably I was aware that what kind of errors that I'm looking for, right? I kind of knew that, okay, this is a verb tenses related topic, so the questions are going to come from verb tenses. So I used to look for the specific errors in the question, right? So what I'm trying to say is that once I moved to 700 level questions, I did not know what kind of error am I looking at. And since I did not know what kind of error am I looking at, I was not able to find them. So there was a lack of proper approach. I won't say it was bad retention power. On that day also, when I'm solving a question of tenses now, if you come to me and ask me that, okay, do you remember this rule? I would have probably remembered that. And I will prove that to you even today. Like I will solve a few questions also as we go forward. And I would show you guys that you know certain rules, but you're not able to apply them. The reason was I was not learning a method. So you have to understand two things. Okay, number one, there's nothing fundamentally wrong about me. I'm a good learner. But the reason I'm not getting questions right is because I'm not applying I don't know the rules. I don't know the process, let's say, of applying those rules. I know the rules, but I don't know how to apply them. Getting my point, guys? Is that making sense to you? Quick yes, no. If this is making sense, would love to hear from you. So try to relate to me. So I followed all of this. I did a lot of this, and not just SC. RC was SC and RC were like two areas which actually used to give me headache. I remember like CR was still okay. I felt that okay, CR is something which is logical and I can do well because I was good in quant. So that might have been a inherent assumption in my mind, but I was also doing pretty well overall. Okay. Avish has a very important point to make. I have to take it up. Avish says, irony is that no matter how much you study about rules, most of the questions have exceptions in them. Avish, exactly my thought process. I used to always feel when I used to get a question wrong that there are so many exceptions. How do I work my way around it? But what we don't realize in most cases is that those are not really exceptions. The problem why we actually get stuck in those is because we kind of never ever look at the bigger picture. And I'm going to show you the bigger picture today. I'm going to help you understand. I've taken a lot of examples to for you that. But let me first talk about RC also a little bit. That's another area. Like, why am I talking about SC and RC and not CR? let me tell you that as well. When I speak to students, like students on calls, and I actually discuss their problems, I actually come across in 80% of the cases, the problems are with SC and RC. In fact, less than 20% cases, people come to me and say that CR is a problem for me. In most of the cases, that is the problem, basically. So you need to understand, like, let's focus on RC also. What was my approach towards RC? So when I started, I remember that my tutors, and when I was learning, I was actually working with a coaching institute. I'm not going to name it, but yeah, it was a very well-known coaching in India. And they taught me like various type of questions first. They taught me, okay, what is a main point question? What is an inference question? What is a detailed question? What do you do in a main point? What is the difference between the words like, let's say, criticize or analyze and describe and whatnot? All those things were taught to me. And they used to tell me that, okay, you have to start reading. Like, you have to read a lot in order to do RCs well. And I was someone who hated reading. I hardly remember a book that I had completed. I had probably completed one book which was on by Robert T. Kiyosaki. I'm not sure if you have heard that, Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was the only book which interested me to read it till the end. Otherwise, I used to take up books, never end up completing them. Halfway through, lose interest. That was what happened with me all the time. So reading was a problem for me. So my tutors told me, read, you should read, you have to read. And I remember I made it a habit that, okay, and I was a diligent student, I'm a hardworking, I will call myself as a hardworking student. So I used to sit down every single day with a newspaper along with my breakfast, and I would spend half an hour on reading the editorial section, or with the main news or editorial section. And my sole focus was to read fast, to complete it as soon as possible. So, for example, let's say I used to sit with a target that in the beginning, I kind of like in 30 minutes I was able to read, let's say what, 3 articles of this much length. I need to make it 4 or 5 as I move forward. That was my thought process. That read newspapers, read novels, build vocabulary, focused a lot on that. The only thing which I learned was that I have to kind of skim through the passage and I have to solve more passages. But I never realized what was the real issue that was happening with me. And after 6 months of doing all this that I have told you, I solved 2000 plus verbal questions, but my scores fluctuated as much as 25% to 70%. In some tests, my accuracy would be 25%, some tests it would be 70%, and very, very big fluctuations used to happen. This is the range that I'm talking about. On an average, I used to score like 50%, 60%, that kind of a number was there. And I remember this was after spending 2 hours daily on verbal preparation. I used to spend that much effort. So Aditi, I'm going to tell you, yes, reading with understanding is the solution, but I'm coming to the solution a little later. Please bear with me till that. But I just want you to understand what was my thought process, how my mind worked at that kind of time. And this is something which will probably summarize it in the best possible way. So, you know what, when you kind of click on that submit button, right? You complete a quiz and you click on the submit button, and there's a fraction of a second difference or maybe 2 second difference between the time that you click on that button and the score flashes on your screen, right? Like that thing, or maybe you're referring to a book, you solved the question, a set of questions, and then you're matching your answers with those in the book at the end of the book. And you kind of calculate your percentage accuracy. You always pray to God that, please, this time around, give me a good score in verbal. If this is happening with me, we're exactly in the same position I was in at that point of time after 6 months of prep. There was no confidence. I was never confident of verbal. I always feel anxious. In fact, to the point that I always started my mocks and everything with quant. So SAF, I was able to score a 740 on GMAT with a verbal 41 and a quant 50. So that was my first attempt. I've just taken one attempt on GMAT, never really tried for the second one. But yeah, I think I can do better in verbal now. But still, so what I'm trying to tell you guys is that this is the situation I was in. So you guys are not in a different situation than I was. But what mattered was what I did after this. So obviously, this was something which was happening to me. This was a situation that I was in. But it is important that you kind of take that, change your thought process slightly. And let me illustrate my thought process at that point of time with the question over here. So again, generally, I focus on solving the questions a lot, but I will try to make my point. I will try to assert that what was wrong with my approach, what was wrong with my entire preparation at that point of time. So this is a GMAT official question which I have shown on the screen. I'm taking my camera off from the screen right now. I'm giving you guys 2 minutes to solve this question. And till those 2 minutes, please don't mark the answers or write the answers in the comments. After that, I will ask you to post your answers in the comment, and then we'll take it up. But the reason I'm taking this question, let me highlight that to you as well, is to basically like help you in understanding that like how. Sorry, my bad. Just a second, guys. I was just trying to remove this logo because I think this will interfere with the screen. Yeah, now you should be able to see the text completely. So the reason I'm taking this question is I am going to solve this question as I would have solved it when I was a student and I was struggling at that 6 months period that I was standing at. Okay, so I'm going to be muted for the next 2 minutes. You have your time, solve this question, and then we are going to show you, I'm going to show you how I would have approached it at that point of time. So all the best, guys. 2 minutes is what you have. All right, guys. So you can post your answers now. I've given slightly more than 2 minutes to you so that you could have your time. Okay. So you can post your answers now and tell me like how did you find this question. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tell you like how I would have approached it at that point of time. Now, when I was new in my GMAT prep journey, what I used to always do was I used to focus on basically the, let's say, what used to sound right to my ear if I'm not able to apply any rule or whatever. So when I used to solve this question earlier, in the very beginning, I would have probably started reading the question, and this is how I would do. And I'm doing it out loud so that you can hear my mind out, okay? You can understand what all I'm doing. Scientists have recently discovered what could be the largest and oldest living organism on Earth, a giant fungus that is an interwoven pedigree of mushrooms and root-like tentacles, spawned by a single fertilized spore some 10,000 years ago and extending. The moment I read extending, I feel weird. I feel that it should be extended for more than 30 acres in the soil of a Michigan forest. So if I go by that, if I go by what sounds right to my ear, I would have probably picked B, which is something which Vishal, Prashant, and Ball, and some of you are also picking up. So that's what I would have picked if I went with my ears. And as I proceeded further, obviously this was something which was not working for me because obviously I was not a native speaker of the language. So colloquialism comes into picture. We speak a lot of things which are not grammatically correct. And if I go by what sounds right to my ear, there is no way to improve in my score. So there was someone who taught me the splits approach, which is something which Avish was guessing also that I used to follow. Yes, so splits is something which I followed after that. So after 2 months of prep, I came across this approach somewhere on the internet. I heard that in grammar, what you can do is look at the options, try to see what is the difference in each option, basically, and try to apply grammar rules on top of that. So that's what I came to as the next stage of my prep, where I thought, okay, let me try to use the splits approach to solve the question. So if I use that now, and if I try to show you how I used to solve it using splits at that point of time, I would look at I would vertically scan the option choices, okay? So if I look at the vertical scanning of the options, I see that the only thing which is marked is extend, right? Extending, basically. And all the choices that I see are different forms of extending. So I would classify all those into different buckets. So second one, for example, is the simple present tense of the verb extend. For third one, choice C is the simple past tense. Fourth one is the simple past tense with the subject. Fifth one is present continuous tense. And what about option A? Seems like present continuous, but I don't see that is over here. Most likely a participle or something. So what I see is that we are looking at different forms of the same verb. So what I would now try to think is that I am probably, the main thing that I have to understand is the tense, the right uses of the tense over here. If I can understand the right tense, I can probably get this question correct. Okay. So yes, Rakshay, you're right in saying this tests parallelism also. So if I go by that, let me again read the question. Scientists have recently discovered what could be the largest and oldest living organism on Earth. A giant fungus that is an interwoven filigree of mushrooms and root-like tentacles, spawned by a single fertilized spore. This tells me about the fungus, most likely. So this is a quality of the fungus. This is something, a description of the fungus, spawned by a single fertilized spore and extending for more than 30 acres in the soil of Michigan forest. So again, this also tells me more about the fungus. So if I go by that logic, this is something which is a description about the fungus. So if it is a description about the fungus, which tense form should I be using? Which tense form do you use to describe something? Simple present makes sense. Simple present, maybe, yeah, because that's what we do. Sunrise is east. That's what we say. Simple present. Or is that fungus still extending? Is that still extending? If that is the thought process that I want to communicate, or this is something which might have completed. This is an action which might have completed. So maybe I will go with extended. Not very sure, because we are using spawned by a single fertilized spore. So that is the past action. Most likely this extended is also the past action. Extended probably sounds better also with spawned. So I'll probably go with option C. And this is how I used to solve the question of SC. And one thing which my mind was that I need to solve SC questions faster. That was what used to be my thought process. Mohit, yes, you are right. The right answer is choice A. But what I'm trying to tell you over here is that most people, like if you look at GMAT Club data, again, I'm just taking out data from GMAT Club about how many people mark which option. A is the correct one. A is the correct answer, no doubt about that. But if you look at the number of people, like this is just one single word which is underlined, basically. But in reality, if you look at those right answers, 30% people mark choice B. So see how common this thought process is, that you look at the splits, you look at the usage of tenses, and then you work on that. Ayush says this question is a play on tenses. No, Ayush, this is not a play on tenses. If you understand what the question really tests, it has nothing to do with tenses. But you will only understand what the question really tests if you try to solve the question in a different way. If you try to solve the question in this fashion, you're always going to be confused. Now, you might be thinking, how Piyush, why Piyush? Many of might think, okay, please explain why A is correct. I'll do that. But for that, you have to be patient. Understand, the agenda of this session is not for me to teach you how to solve this question, because this question is not going to come on GMAT. Agenda is to get the thought process right, to correct things for you so that you are able to solve questions on your own. Okay. And sometimes I take the sessions and people comment that Piyush, why did you not solve this question? Understand that agenda first. I'm going to solve this for you, but you have to be patient. What you need to understand is still the point, and this is the thought process that old Piyush had, who was struggling big time. Because I used to think that, okay, I have to approach it grammatically. I have to approach it grammatically. So let me help you understand what is wrong with this approach. And I'll take another example. And again, the animations could be a little off on this screen, so pardon me for that. But I've just tried to take up a very, let's say, example from again OG questions, which is very similar to the point that I'm trying to make over here. So this is a question. This is one of the options in one official question. If I remember correctly, this question number 715 or something like that. So Aditya, I'm going to take up your questions later. Rajkaran, any question on that question, why it is incorrect, I'm going to take that up later. Don't worry, I'm going to come back to that. But try to focus on the bigger picture over here. What is wrong with our thought process? So for example, this question is choice C, which is basically an incorrect choice in that particular question. So if you want to read this, give yourself 30 seconds to read this. I don't mind that. Give yourself 30 seconds, read this choice, and tell me what do you think is wrong with this. Or if you want to take 1 minute, take 1 minute. I'm going to be here because if I just explain it to you, you probably won't understand what I'm talking about. That will be Hebrew to you. So better that you read it if you want to. Okay, Wall says wrong comparison. Okay, comparing species with male and female. Okay, okay, so I think some of you would have spent some time on this. I had to wrap this up really soon, so I'm gonna go a little fast. Generally, I don't go that fast, but let's still see what is wrong with this. So when I would have solved this question for the first time, I would have thought, okay, let's read this. Unlike those in most warbler species, the male and female blue-winged warblers are very difficult to distinguish. So yeah, so what we'll think is that those is referring to the male and female blue-winged warblers. So if I replace those with basically what it is referring to, so the sentence reads, unlike male and female blue-winged warblers, in most warbler species, which is a little weird. Like we're talking about in most warbler species, we're talking about blue-winged warblers, we're specifying that. And then we are saying, unlike male and female blue-winged warblers, in most warbler species, the male and female blue-winged warblers are very different to distinguish. So what are you trying to compare? They're comparing the same entity, right? That is incorrect. That is incorrect, right? So those is incorrect over here. Like that is the problem. If I use those, that refers to male and female blue-winged warblers, that ends up communicating an illogical comparison, right? So that's what we see. Okay, some of you are saying those is unnecessary. Again, the idea is not to solve this particular question. The idea is to understand the logic which I'm trying to build over here. So when I solve this question as a student, sometimes people develop this learning that, okay, whenever I see a word those, I need to replace it with the entire phrase which is mentioned over here in the next sentence, in the comparison part, right? That's what many people think, that I have to replace that. If you just memorize that as a learning, and this is another OG question, just there's 3, 4 questions apart from this one. If you memorize that learning and if you try to solve this question, just give another minute to this one also. Okay, and again, I'm just giving a part of the choice to make a point. The idea is not to solve this entire question. Give yourself a minute to read this. All right, guys, I think you guys have had a minute to think about this. Again, as I said, I'm going a little fast. Pardon me for that, but these questions are just to bring about a very important point that I want to make. So if you kind of take this as a rule, like, okay, those is referring to the entire entity. This is how you look at probably the sentence. Let me take my video off from the screen. That way you can focus on the entire screen. You might think that, okay, if I replace those with Thai crafts, Thai village crafts or Thai crafts, whatever you want to write it as, if I replace those with the entire thing, then this comparison becomes illogical, right? Thai village crafts like Thai crafts of other cultures. I say Thai village crafts like Thai village crafts of other cultures have developed through the principle, which is weird, right? Thai village crafts of other cultures is wrong, right? So Pratik is also saying that it's trying to compare Thai village craft to Thai village craft of other cultures. This is what we do. Like, this is how our brain functions. We see those over there in that question. We learned something that if you replace those with the entire phrase, basically that becomes illogical. Same logic applies over here. Thai village crafts like those. If I replace with Thai village crafts, this is incorrect. But on GMAT, this one is correct. This one is incorrect. The sentence is correct as is. Why so? Because the context is different. You can't compare those two concepts just like that. And firstly, this is how exactly I used to think when I was a student. I used to memorize rules, memorize incidences. That, okay, if this works in this way, I used to make generalizations instead of thinking about the core reason why that is happening. And if you don't focus on the core reason, you'll always get stuck in this deadly cycle of working, studying, and not seeing that improvement. Now, let me help you understand what is different here. Again, I'm not explaining the question in depth, but just at a high level for you to understand. When we talk about those, when we say unlike those in most wobbler species, what you need to understand is we are talking about something within the wobbler species, right? The something has to be there in the sentence. Now, obviously, think of it this way. In this entire part, this is basically an adjective. If you want to call it, this is an adjective, this is a noun. Or you can call it, this is the general. Wobbler is basically, when I say wobblers, that is a general thing. This specify all wobblers. This part is specific. Okay, this tells us what kind of wobbler we are talking about now. Okay, now those can either refer to wobblers. For example, I can replace those with wobblers. It is possible because since I'm saying I'm using those, it can relate to just the noun part, which is there, just the entity, or it can either relate to both, basically, the specific element. Understand this, guys. It should relate to either the main entity, which is the general entity, or it can talk about the specific. So in this case, those can probably be one of the two. Okay, it can be one of the two. In case it is any of the two, if I say unlike wobblers in most wobbler species, the male and female wobblers are very difficult to distinguish, that is not communicating a logical meaning. On the other hand, if I say unlike male and female blue-winged wobblers in most wobbler species, that is also not communicating a logical meaning. However, if there was an option for me to just compare male and female, the logical meaning that the author wants to communicate is that unlike the male and female wobblers in most wobbler species, the male and female blue-winged wobblers are very difficult to distinguish. He wants to compare male and female wobblers in most wobbler species with male and female wobblers in blue-winged wobblers. That's what he's trying to compare. That's what he's trying to compare. But since the construction is such that I can either replace those with just wobblers, or I can replace those with just the entire thing, male and female blue-winged wobblers. If I'm taking this entire thing, I can't just drop this. If I could have somehow dropped this, the sentence would have been correct. But either I go for the entire thing, or either I go for just the wobbler. Okay, understand this, guys. This is very important for you to understand. That's why the context is different. On the other hand, in this situation, the second sentence is correct, because if I just pick the crafts, because see, it says like those of other cultures. So it is very clear that I'm looking at a general thing. I'm not looking at specific thing. I'm comparing something of other cultures, and I'm comparing it with something of other cultures. So I don't need to bring in the Thai village unnecessarily in that. I just need to bring in the crafts to replace that with those with that. And if I do that, that is correct. That is logical. On the other hand, in the question on the top, we don't have that option. Even if I just bring wobblers, the sentence is illogical. If just bringing wobblers would have kept the sentence logical, the sentence would have been correct. Okay, so Aditi has now went into a different version of all of that. So again, Aditi, come back to the main point. The idea is not to solve this particular question. The idea is to understand what goes wrong with the way we approach verbal. So till the point, what I'm trying to say over here is till the point you memorize rules, you memorize things as rules or generalized stuff that okay, this is how things work, and you don't focus on the context or the meaning, the problem is gonna stay as it is. It is not gonna change. It is not gonna change. The biggest issue with us is when I realize that after spending so much time I'm able to do well in quant, why am I not able to do well in verbal? Okay, I know I've spent 45 minutes doing this, but I hope this is making sense, guys. Are you guys able to relate to me what I'm saying? Quick yes, no. Is this discussion helping? Let me know. If you want me to pace through faster to the solution, I can do that. But I felt that somehow focusing on the core problem is very important. Most of the cases, we don't do that. Many people don't focus on the core problem. So I'm focusing a lot of effort on that, and then I'm come to the solution. Okay, Pratik says, yes, this is helping. What about others? Just want to get some real-time feedback. I can probably change the direction of the session if required. I have a lot of slides. I can definitely cover that. Aditi says big time. Well says kind of. Okay, so let me know all what you think is gonna help. Aditi says yes. So that's good to know, guys. Krishna says yes, I can relate so much. Then thank you so much, guys. This is a different way I'm taking the session, an experiment, but I think we are headed in the right direction. We are going getting some great learnings. So let me come back to this now. So the main problem which I realized after those 6 months was that you're not focusing on the problem. You're not focusing on the core problem. The main problem was I was focusing on the symptoms. I was saying, okay, my timing is poor. Let me improve my timing. So I was focusing on timing. Let me learn shortcuts. I learned splits approach. Did that help? Yes, it did. I was able to reduce my time. But did that help improve my accuracy? No. If it doesn't improve your accuracy, then what is the point of doing that? It's a waste of your time and energy. I was low on confidence after doing everything. I felt that hard questions is a problem. I should practice more. I felt that my reading speed is slow, so I focused on improving my reading speed. I felt that unfamiliar genre is a problem, so I focused more on those. I felt that I'm making repetitive errors, so I need to avoid those. But the entire thing, I'm actually missing the bigger picture. The problem is none of these. None of these is the problem. These are all symptoms. You go to a doctor, you tell them, okay, Piyush, you know what? I have a fever, I have vomiting, I have a headache, I have nausea, whatever. The doctor is not going to give you medicines for that. Doctor first diagnoses the root cause. He focuses on the root problem. And that's what you need to understand. The root problem is none of these. If you focus on these things and you just try to solve this, you're not doing a good job. You'll never be able to do it effectively. The root cause is the way we approach verbal. And let me explain that with an example from quant. So let's take this example, very simple example. If you have to solve a simple interest question, okay, you know simple interest is P into R into T by 100. But let's say, however, for whatever reason, on the day of the test, you forget this formula. On the exam day, you forget this formula for whatever reason, you don't remember this anymore. Will you be able to solve a question on simple interest? Answer me in yes and no in the poll, in the chat, sorry. Quick yes, no, guys. I want to hear from all of you. If you forget the formula of simple interest on the day of the exam, will you be able to solve a question on simple interest? Okay, Avish has a good question. So Avish, again, in specific cases, you can actually schedule a discussion with me if you want to discuss about specific use case, or you want to understand how the GMATWhiz team can help you improve your score, just like many others that we have helped. You can probably use this link to discuss. I can take up your individual questions probably towards the end of the session, but right now I'll not be able to give you specific advice based on your use case, because again, we have to cover a lot of different use cases also. Okay, so this is the link. You can use Avish later on as well. So I see yes by Avish, Ayush, Vishal, Sai Krishna, Gunda, Aditi, Raksha says no, Wall says no. Okay, good. So most of you are saying yes, some of you are saying no. Now, answer to this depends, guys. It depends, right? It is either yes or no. That completely depends on how have you understood this rule. So if, let's say, for example, you know that this rule is basically unitary method, like simple interest is a simple unitary method. You don't need to memorize the rule. Even if you forget the rule, you will apply unitary method, you will get the question correct, right? So if you know the logic behind the rule, if you know the logic behind the rule, you're not dependent, you're not paralyzed if you forget the rule. You will still get the question right. And this is a very important point you need to understand very clearly, guys. On the other hand, if you don't know the logic behind the rule, for whatever reason, you don't know how it works, the moment you forget the formula, the question is gone. Question is gone. Now, I've taken a simple example of simple interest. This is a very relatable example. There are complex formulas in quant also. Don't know the rule behind the formula, you are doomed. Now, try and relate this with verbal. You have been trying to learn on the grammar rules, right? Blindly. Okay, a participle is supposed to work this way. A run-on sentence is this. Infinitive works this way. A past perfect tense works this way. This is an exception to this rule. If you remember all the rules like this, the moment you forget a rule on the day of the test, you will never, ever, ever be able to solve the question. The answer will always be no. Why? Because you never bothered about understanding the logic behind the rule. You never thought of that. Think about it, guys. Why was grammar created in the first place? Why are those exceptions there? We say, okay, there are tenses, there are exceptions to tenses. But why do those exceptions exist? The reason those exceptions exist is because if we don't have those exceptions, there will be an illogical meaning that will be communicated. Understand it this way, guys. Grammar of any language is to ensure that the language communicated between people has a logic, makes logical sense to everyone. Standardization is important, so is meaning. Especially in case of GMAT. GMAT is not testing you to become a grammarian. Why is it testing you on SC then? The reason why it tests you on SC is to ensure that you're able to communicate logical meaning. That's the most important thing that you need to understand. So if you do not know the logic behind the rules, you will always be dependent on them. You will always feel paralyzed. You will never feel in control. And that's a very, very big issue. I realized this after a long time. I'm trying to help you understand that you need to realize this. You're still approaching verbal in, let's say, using this grammar and all those that you will struggle, especially if you're a non-native speaker. Especially if you're a non-native speaker. In quant, for example, we always learn concepts like things and then learn formulas. Again, I wanted to cover this, but we are short on time. I'm actually moving forward. What we need to understand is that we don't teach verbal in a methodical fashion. We approach verbal not a methodical, not logical. We try to learn shortcuts. In quant, on the other hand, we first learn the right methods, and as we do more questions, we realize that there are shortcuts. That realization comes after going through the method properly. And you might not realize this, but probably in your school you have done that method so many times that you have developed that logical thinking to a level where you are able to identify the shortcuts. In verbal, we try to jump directly to shortcuts, which is the wrong thing to do. You need to first learn the logical method that exists. So if you really want to change your verbal score, let's get to that. First thing that you need to work on is have a positive thought process. This is what I did when I started my second innings for verbal. I told myself, and let me ask how you guys, this is another question, interesting question, and introspect and tell me the answer. How many of you feel proud about your quant skills? How many of you feel proud about your quant skills? Just say a yes, no. And it's okay, I'm not asking you to boast about yourself, but just a yes, no, guys. How many of you feel proud that you are really good in quant? And I remember I used to feel that. I felt that on a very bad day, even if you wake me up and I'm half asleep, I will still score a 49 on quant minimum. 50, 51 is the number that I'm going to get on the GMAT anyhow. I'm great at quant. That's what I used to feel. Okay, I have a lot of answers. Samagra, Avish, Vishal, Sai Krishna says yes. Aditya, Ayush and Aditi says no. Okay, good to see your comments, guys. Thank you so much. Not exactly proud, but voices I'm satisfied. Good. So I started thinking, like when I started my second year, I told myself, Piyush, you feel so proud about yourself in quant, right? I used to feel proud. I accept this. I used to feel that if there is a quant question that I can't solve except geometry, probably no one else can solve it. I was that confident about quant. So I told myself, Piyush, if you really feel that confident about quant, you think that you are a great student, then your actual achievement will be when you actually ace verbal, actually achieve ace verbal. And I actually changed my thought process around that time. And this change in thought process is very, very important. And I'm giving you some positive thoughts which you need to iterate every day. Some of you might think that, okay, this is Gyan which Piyush is giving. Is it like this is like spirituality and going in that direction? But yes, sometimes that spirituality, that positiveness is required in your life. You need to iterate to yourself. The problem is not with verbal. It is because I feel verbal is subjective. And I probably did not ask this question, but if I had asked this question, I know many of you would have said yes. How many of you feel, if I ask this question, how many of you feel that verbal is subjective, that there could be two possible answers? In quant, there is just one possible answer. In verbal, there could be two possible answers. That's why I'm bad at verbal. If you think this, say a yes. Like, I'm not going to stop at this, so you can still answer this in the chat with a yes. But trust me, I used to feel that. I never used to tell anyone, but I used to feel that verbal is subjective. So you have to tell yourself, you have to give this positive thought. The problem is not with verbal. It is because I feel it is subjective. I have to stop thinking that. The moment you stop thinking that, things will start to change. Number one, change in thought process. Second, change in thought process. The problem is not with me. It is the way I'm solving questions. You have to understand this. If you don't say that to yourself, you are not gonna have any change whatsoever in your thought process. You're not gonna see a change. Trust me, guys. If you can do well in quant, you can do well in verbal. The reason I asked you that why was I able to do those chapter quizzes well was the same reason. I am not a bad learner, I am a good learner. The problem is with the way I'm approaching my preparation. I want to change my style of preparation. I want to change how I actually go about it. I'm so happy to see your comment, Vishal. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to understand that I have been there. I have been the same person that you have. You are right now. I've been in the same shoes basically. Third thing you need to iterate is, and this is difficult to iterate. I know this is difficult to iterate. This iteration will come after some time, maybe 1-2 months down the line. You need to iterate. Verbal is easy. The answer is there in the question stem. If you want to write down this bullet points in a piece of paper, put it on your screen or wherever you're studying. Verbal is easy. Answer is there in the question stem. And trust me, I mean this. In quant, you have to remember formulas. You have to apply formulas. The answer is something you have to calculate. In verbal, the answer is right there in that question. I know you might say in SC also you have to remember formulas and rules, but trust me, if you understand the logic behind the rules, you will never need to remember those. It's slightly that way. It's in that way, it is slightly like quant, but all other parts of verbal, CR, RC, the answer is right there. Let me tell you another thing, guys. I took the GMAT 4 years back. Okay, last 4 years, I have not taught people for sentence correction. Before that, I did a little bit. I have not touched verbal like extensively. I have not solved a lot of questions. You still give me a SC question, CR question, or RC question to solve. I will still get them correct. The reason for that is I've changed my outlook towards reading. You have to understand the context. That's all that matters in GMAT. And last thought you need to give yourself is, don't focus on solving more questions. Focus more on learning from each and every one, and following a set process. That is what you should focus on. Don't focus on solving more questions. If you still go about doing that, trust me, you are doing the same mistake again. So please make sure that you're not making this mistakes at all. That is the change in thought process you need to have in order to improve your score. All right, guys? Is that clear to all of you? Are we on the same page at least on this part? If you are on the same page on this part, we can actually see an improvement in our scores. Just a quick yes, no will help. Yeah, Avish says, okay, still you can score a quant 51, but it's almost impossible to score a verbal 51. Who needs to score a verbal 51? Let me ask it that way. See, if you get a quant 51, it's equivalent to like the quant 50 is equivalent to scoring a verbal 41. Quant 51 is equivalent to scoring a verbal 42, 44. If you want to become an expert tutor later on, you want to get a quant 51 and a verbal 51, showcase a 800 and get into GMAT industry as a tutor, that's probably the only reason why you would probably aim for a V51. You get a quant 51 with a verbal 42, you're looking at a 760 or 770. That's good enough for a scholarship and getting into any school. So don't worry about that. You don't have to get to that, right, Avish? Okay. Good. So I'm seeing some positive comments from you guys. So let's now, if this is clear, let's now move ahead to the next thing. Let me now show you how to solve this question. Again, I wanted to solve another question, but let me now show you how to solve that same SC question which I gave you a little while back. How would I solve it today? So let's solve this very quickly. Scientists have recently discovered. Okay, so now what I do is I read the sentence by breaking them into small chunks. That's what I do. I focus on understanding the meaning. I focus on understanding the context. So scientists have recently discovered. So when I read this, I understand that we are talking about some discovery, something which will basically come next. What could be the largest and oldest living organism on Earth? So this discovery is about the largest and oldest living organism on Earth. So this sentence is sufficient to tell me about the discovery. Then we see a comma, and then I see a giant fungus. Okay, so a giant fungus. This discovery should have been the giant fungus, about the giant fungus. This organism should have been the giant fungus. That is what I get as a feeling. That is an interwoven filigree of mushroom and root-like tentacles. So that is telling me about the fungus. This tells me what is this fungus made of. It is interwoven filigree of mushrooms and root-like tentacles. Okay, let's read further. Spawned by a single fertilized spore some 10,000 years ago. So this part, 10,000 years ago, some 10,000 years ago, spawned by a single fertilized spore, probably tells me about the aspect of being the oldest animal. So when I look at it this way, I kind of understand clearly from this that this spawned is actually telling me more about this fungus. Okay. Now, let me ask this question. Let me understand the role played by this spawn. Spawn is giving me additional information, but what is the exact role played by the spawn? Is the fungus doing the action of spawning? Is the fungus that spawned itself? No. The action of spawning is not done by the fungus. It is done by a single fertilized spore, right? That was the one which did the action. So, if the action was done by a single fertilized spore, then shouldn't this sentence say fungus was spawned by? If I wanted to use this as a verb form, I should have a was in front of spawned. But since there is no was, this means definitely this is not a verb. This is a verbal. This is a modifier. And again, this is something that we teach in our course in GMATWhiz. Even in the free trial, this is available. So again, I don't have the bandwidth of teaching this rule to you right now. But if you want to check this out, you can check it out in the free trial of GMATWhiz. You'll find a file called Identifying Verbs. You can go through it. That will help you understand how to differentiate verbs from verbals. And trust me, if there is one single rule that helps you in understanding the meaning a lot better than it is understanding when a ed verb is a verbal, when a ed verb is a verb. Okay? So in this case, this is a ed verb. This is just giving me additional information about the sentence. This is a modifier, which is a flexible modifier, is what we call in the GMATWhiz lingo. Some people might call it a different modifier. Pratik says participle modifier. I don't care about exactly the terms, but the main idea is that it is a noun followed by a modifier which modifies that noun. This can be connected with the previous sentence. But like coming back to the main idea, this sentence, this spawned is not a verb. This is a modifier. This is giving me additional information about the fungus. It is telling me why it is the oldest. Now let's read further. And the moment I see and, I know this is something parallelism is what we are looking at over here. Extending for more than 30 acres in the soil of a Michigan forest. So this extending also is parallel to this spawn. This is also giving me additional information. This tells me that it's extending for more than 30 acres in the soil of Michigan forest. So it is telling me about the largest angle. So one aspect is telling me why it is the oldest. One aspect is telling me why it is the largest. Okay. Now, since I know that spawned is not a verb, it is a modifier. Obviously, extending has to be a modifier also. It cannot be a verb form. And the moment you understand this, you will be able to solve the question so easily, guys. It will be very, very easy. Sorry for repeating the slide. So it will be very easy for you to solve it now. If you look at the options, you will see that extends, as we said, it's a simple present tense form. So this is a verb, right? This is a verb. So this cannot be the correct answer. Extended is also a verb. It is the simple past tense form. It extended is subject plus verb. We are looking at a modifier, so this is also wrong. This is a present continuous tense, so this is also a verb form, which is also wrong. So extending is the only modifier that we have, which is the correct answer. A is the correct answer. Think of it, if you think of it logically, it is so easy for you to solve it. Okay, Aditya has a question. Aditya, again, focusing on this one, I'll just quickly take your, but not more questions on this question, because again, the idea is for a verbal score improvement. Wouldn't extends be parallel with fungus? That is Now, how will it be parallel with that is? Think about it. Do you see any parallelism marker over there that suggests that? If that is the case, what is pond modifying then? Is pond modifying tentacles? And if it is modifying tentacles, how can it modify tentacles? Think about that as well. Spawned by a single fertilized spore some 10,000 years ago is telling us about the fungus. It is telling us why the fungus is the oldest. Okay? And when I say extends, that is like saying illogically that it is still happening, right? It is like it extends every single day, extends for more than. It's a little weird also to see. Okay, so focus on that, guys. So see how easy it is. I wanted to solve another question to help you understand this meaning-based approach, but we are short of time, so I'm not gonna get into that. But I just will point out one thing. So if you really want to improve your score, very important exercise that you have to do is you have to start solving sometimes questions without choices, so that you're not focused on the, let's say, the splits and all of that. So first, always try to understand the intended meaning, try to identify the problems with the original sentence by focusing on the meaning itself. That is what you need to do, first step. Okay, so that is very important. And let me quickly go back. Okay, so before I get to this case study, let me change the slide order a bit because I need to like ensure that we are moving in the right way. So just give me 1 second, guys. I'll just change a few slides here and there. This way we'll be able to actually do better. So if you understand this part, what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to close this subject sentence correction part itself. So how should you work on sentence correction is what you get to now. So the solution. The right learning curve for sentence correction should be that when you are learning all these individual topics, you should try to learn all these rules from a meaning perspective. Always focus on that. Try to relate to that simple interest example that I was talking about. If you knew the formula of simple interest or how it is derived, you will do a very good job at it. Similarly, if you have an understanding logically why each of these rules exist, you'll actually do a much better job at it. And that's what I changed about my thought process when I was a student. Okay. So meaning is the common thread that binds all of them. So you have to focus on learning meaning. And learning meaning is something which you have to do in a strategic fashion. So what I'm showing you right now is a snapshot of our course. But even if you're not a GMAT student, you have to ensure that you're doing this in the right way. So what you should focus on is, without thinking about any grammar rule initially, understand what is the intended meaning of any given sentence, any complex sentence, how to identify the meaning of that, and work backwards. Okay, see, when you have to understand the meaning, the first thing that you have to do is when you're reading a sentence, you have to break it down. Okay, so think of it this way: if I have to eventually understand the meaning of any sentence, I have to understand how to break down the sentence. Okay, so ideally, in order to get the meaning, you have to break down sentences. Now, imagine that if you want to disassemble a furniture, okay, if you want to disassemble a furniture and you don't know how the furniture was assembled in the first place, and you start disassembling it, there is a very high likelihood that you might break the furniture. Understand that, guys. I'm trying to just explain you the process, the thought process that you should have. So if you don't understand how the furniture was assembled, you will probably break it while disassembling it. Similarly, if you want to understand where to break down the sentence, because in order to understand the meaning in the fastest possible way, you should be breaking down sentences at the right places. So in order to understand where to break down a sentence, you need to understand how a complex sentence was created in the first place, how it was created in the first place. So that's how your thought process should be. So first understand how a simple sentence is complicated. And in order to do this, you don't have to go through the understanding of simple, complex, compound sentences, all of that cliched things. You don't have to go about that. You just have to understand logically how a sentence is elongated, how additional information is stuffed. Because when you understand that, then whenever you read a sentence, you're able to look at the sentence as okay, this is the important element, this is additional information, I can take this out. This is the additional information, I can take it out, but still keeping that in mind. Okay, don't think of it as non-essential modifiers and all those things that I'm talking about. Plain simple logic. What is the main meat? How do we move forward from there? So what I recommend is first understand how a sentence is created, then go to the step of breaking it down, then go to the meaning analysis. Now you might be thinking, okay, how much time, Piyush, this will take? Trust me, guys, it is easy. You can see on your screen, in our course, we do it in 8 hours approximately. And out of this 8 hours, 5 to 6 hours you spend on solving questions and reviewing the solutions. You're still practicing. But this is where you start. This is where you change your thought process. And then you move to the individual topics. Then you go to individual topics. You learn each and every topic from a meaning perspective. Try to do the grammar rule from a meaning perspective. So what is happening over here is through the first part, you are actually learning how to identify the meaning of any sentence. Okay. Now, when you learn the grammar rule from a meaning perspective, what happens is the moment you start thinking about the meaning, automatically you start identifying the errors because you know all the rules from a logical perspective. So this becomes a very, very easy and simple process for one to follow. Understood this, guys? This is very important for you to understand. Now let me talk about a case study. And this case study, I'll just take up Rishabh's example. The same guy. And again, if anyone of you wants to watch his entire journey, I'm going to share the link to his interview as well, where we have actually conducted his interview in depth and actually he talks about the entire journey. So if you want to check it out later on your own, the entire story, you can do that by using this link. But why am I bringing this story up is because you as a student need to pinpoint your main issues as well. So just to give you some background, when Rishabh came to us and discussed with me, he had a call with me. He had taken the GMAT and he scored a 670 on GMAT. He did not have an ESR. That was an online attempt if I remember correctly. So he did not have an ESR, but he had a lot of data from his mocks. So he had compiled all the data points and he kept the data points in an Excel sheet. So what he told me was that his sentence correction score is around 78%, SCR is around 56%, and RC is around 49%. Now let me ask you a question, guys. I know we are almost 70 minutes into the session, so some of you might feel already overburdened with information, but I want you to turn your analysis mind on or engine on and tell me, like, if you are in research position, where will you focus most of your attention? Where will you start working with? Which part? Let me hear from you guys. If you were in research position, these are the numbers that you are getting in your mocks in general, and you want to take the GMAT in the next, let's say, 30 days. Rishabh wanted to take the GMAT before the next round of applications. Where will you start? Okay, Vishal says SC. What about others? Okay, I'm seeing some responses. Well, Aditi, what about others, guys? Muso says CR, Pratik says RC and CR, Val and Aditi says RC. Okay, what about others, guys? I hope all of this is making sense. I know I have been going a little slow, but I just wanted to make sure that you go in depth. I have my usual slides of the strategy and all, but the main thing is to understand the pain points majorly. Okay, so we don't have any other comments. Okay, just 5 people. Guys, what about others? Quickly, what do you think? Yeah, that's like the common thought process for everyone is like, yeah, CR and RC, right? That's where you should focus your attention. But one thing which I liked a lot about Rishabh was he came to me and told me, Piyush, what you know what, I want my score in the next 30 days. But I leave that up to you. I actually want it in the next 30 days. But you tell me what is supposed to be done and I'll do that. And initially, like obviously the data point, if you go by the data point, and in fact, I have a slide on this as well, someone would probably say that, okay, start with CR and RC, not with SC because SC is already at a 78% level. But what you need to understand is, you need to understand the root cause. If you don't understand the root cause, that's where the problem will start. One thing that you need to understand in GMAT verbal is everything is interrelated. If you're poor in CR and RC, it's not just because of CR and RC that you're poor. It could be because of the way you read things. In sentence correction, you can still probably learn some grammar rules, memorize those, and mathematically treat sentence correction and get the easy and medium questions right. If you are doing that, you can achieve a level of 80% doing so. But what you need to understand is that Rishabh was still not at a 94, 95% level in SC. That means that he cannot be 100% sure of his SC capabilities, whether he is actually reading the questions correctly or not. Is he actually going about reading it slowly or not? And if he is not reading things right, he will actually struggle in CR and RC. That's what you need to understand. That was a very important lesson that like we gave Rishabh. And he agreed that let's actually test my sentence correction skills to start with. And understand this, guys, this meaning-based approach which I told you, why did I focus so much on that? Why did I talk to you about disassembling things, understanding the breakpoints, reading it so well? The reason for all this is that even in an RC passage, if you have to simplify a passage that you are reading, the only way to simplify it is by reading it, by breaking it down, and by understanding the structure well. If you don't understand the structure, if you don't divide the sentence into a into small parts, and I will show you that with an example today. If you don't do that, you will always struggle in RC. You will always struggle in CR also. But this learning is easiest to develop through SC, because when you're doing SC, you're only focusing on one sentence at a time. So it is very easy for you to zoom into it, break it down, and build that reading style as a habit. But the good thing is, if you build that reading style as a habit, that will go a long way in improving your CR and RC scores. So just to give you an idea, guys, when we worked with Rishabh, we started with RC, SC, and when we had one session with him, he also felt that his SC needs improvement. We realized that he's actually solving questions using grammar, but he's not using the meaning-based approach. And you won't believe me when I say this. Some people might say, okay, Piyush, is this actually right what you're saying, what you're about to say next? But this is true. Rishabh ended up spending 60% of his time on sentence correction, 30% of his remaining time on CR, and just 10% of his remaining time in RC. Think about that. Look at these numbers. Will someone come and recommend you ever to spend 60% of your time in SC in this situation? He did that. He agreed to that insight. He agreed to that decision that when I say we, I mean me and Sunita ma'am, we worked with him. We took this decision that this is the best for him. And you won't believe me, he came with us for basically uh, 30 days of prep time. Within 20 days, guys, within 20 days, not even 30, within 20 days, he was able to improve from a 670 to 740. And just to reiterate again, this guy was stuck on a 670 after using two well-known courses. Okay, Vishal says I use the same approach, but I'm stuck at a verbal 35. Vishal, feel free to connect with me. We'll be happy to take this session forward. And anyone of you who wants to have a discussion with me, understand how we can, our team, GMATWhiz team can help you improve your scores, you can use this link which I've just shared to schedule a call on my calendar. I'm more than happy. Again, you might not find the slots in the near, like tomorrow, but just wait for it. It will definitely be worth it. So you can definitely schedule a call. But what I wanted you to understand is that don't be hell bent on numbers. I kind of, I don't want to name anyone, but every day I speak to students. There was one guy I spoke to who has less than verbal 20 in 2 attempts on GMAT, but he still feels that he should just be taking mocks. And his only problem is, let's say, RC and CR. That's impossible. You cannot just be bad at RC and CR and score less than verbal 20. What I'm saying is, again, it's okay to have a thought process. It's okay to analyze your problems and have a certain weakness or strength in mind. But be open to feedback, guys. It is very important for you to understand where exactly you're going wrong and Rishabh did that. So, coming back to the main point. The main point was that if your score in SC is suggesting you are great, still doesn't mean that you should start with CR and RC. The main thing that you have to first understand is how to read a sentence, how to contextualize things. And nothing better than actually a GMAT passage to do this. Again, generally I do this question as this part of the passage. This is an RC passage, a snippet of it, the first para. I actually give a question for students to solve. And when I give a question for students to solve, they focus simply on the question. I know. I also had a feeling in mind that if I don't give you a question to solve, you probably won't have any ends to meet. So probably we'll just, probably it might not be the best experiment, but I'm doing this experiment still. I want to do this experiment to basically help you guys understand how to read. My entire agenda of discussing this is to help you guys how to read, understanding how to read. Okay, so give yourself 3 minutes or so. Those who are watching this in a recorded format can pause the video, do it for 3 minutes. Those who are live right now, I'm giving you 3 minutes. I'm going to be muted. We're going to start a discussion after 3 minutes, and we're going to focus on how to read. And it's going to be a very interesting discussion. Going to give you a lot of insights. Okay. So all the best, guys. I'm going to going on mute. You have 3 minutes to read this passage. Just read this passage and understand what is there. All right, guys. So 3 minutes are up now. So basically, when you are reading this passage, let me know basically in the chat how did you feel while reading this passage? Because I've seen a drop of about 13 students. Like I asked people to read for a specific reason. So those of you who are with me, I'm assuming all of you are very serious about this, and you will actually get a very significant learning from this. So tell me, guys, how did you feel when you were reading this passage yourself? Just tell me that in the chat very quickly, and I'm gonna quickly move forward to actually reading this passage. Quickly. The right reading style is what I'm gonna focus on as we do this. Okay, so let me know like how did you feel about reading this passage? And this is a complex passage. I remember when I like this is a 700 level passage by the way on GMAT, and this is an official passage. When I did this for the very first time, it took me let's say 3 minutes just to read the passage and understand that. In many cases, I see people just spending a minute, minute and a half on reading this for the first time. And let me ask this question, like to those of you who are live with me, how many of you read this passage in the first iteration in about less than 2 minutes? And you probably in this 3 minutes that I gave you, you did multiple iterations of reading this passage. Let me ask, I've asked this question. If you want to tell me in the chat, you can just tell me yes, I read it multiple times, or you can even tell me how much time did you take in the first read or how many times you read this. But the idea is, this is a complex passage. It's a very complicated language, very complicated structure. But if you know how to read things, you can actually break down the structure pretty easily. So let me try to show you that. And this is a skill which you will develop from sentence correction, which will actually move on to RC. Okay, so Pratik says I barely finished in 3 minutes. So again, that could also be a problem if you're not, you don't know where to break and read. So you'll probably be confused about what you're reading, and that will take you longer. So I was able to read it in 3 minutes and understand everything because I was relating things better. So let me show you. Puneet says difficult to understand, but it's actually easy. Let's see. It is an odd but indisputable fact. Okay, the moment I see this, I know that I'm talking about something which is odd, but there is no dispute on that. There is nothing to dispute about that. And whatever this is, it is the author's opinion because this is the first, like first person. This, not necessarily first person, but yeah, it's like it's a fact basically. It seems like a fact, but this is the author's opinion. I don't know what the fact is. I know that it is odd. I'm gonna hear about an odd fact. Okay, let's read further. That the 17th century English women, okay, so this fact is about 17th century English women who are generally, so this is who relates to women, is who are generally regarded as among the forerunners of modern feminism. Okay, so this fact is about 17th century English women. These people are forerunners of modern feminism. So what is the fact? I don't know. This is about this women. That is what I know. The fact, the indisputable fact that the 17th century English women who are regarded as the forerunners of modern feminism are almost all identified with the royalist side. Okay, so this is the odd fact that I'm talking about. This is the indisputable odd fact that almost all these English women, almost 100% of theirs, are on the royalist side. Okay, I don't know what the side is, but it is royalist side. Let's read further. In the conflict between royalists versus parliamentarians, okay, so there is a conflict going on between two parties, R and P. The fact that is odd is that all the 17th century English women who were forerunners or founders of, not technically founders, but yeah, think of it this way, that who led this thought process of modern feminism, they actually are on one side among two parties. And this conflict is known as the English Civil Wars. See how easy it becomes to read and understand this. And see, I'm trying to explain this to you, so it is taking me a little longer. But when I'm doing this to myself, it is so easy. And all I'm doing, when I'm reading this is I'm focusing on the sentence structure. I'm dividing important information. I'm dividing additional information. All of this is happening easily. Let's read further. Since royalist ideology, the moment I see since, I understand that there's a cause and effect coming in. Since royalist ideology is often associated, the moment I see often, I know this is a third party opinion. This may not be author's opinion. This is a third party opinion. Since royalist ideology is often associated with the radical patriarchalism of 17th century for political theorist Robert Filmer. So this is the cause. Since this ideology is associated with radical like the theory or the idea, radical patriarchalism of this guy called Robert Filmer, something happens. That's what the sentence wants to say. But I don't see that something right away. I see a hyphenated portion which says a patriarchalism that equates family and kingdom. Okay, so this is trying to explain what this radical patriarchalism is. So this is additional information. A patriarchalism that equates family and kingdom and asserts the divinely ordained power of the king. So it asserts the power of the king in the kingdom and by analogy of the male head of the household. So it says family and kingdom are similar. So if the kingdom is ruled by the king, then the family should be ruled by the male head. That's what this patriarchalism is about. But this is additional information which tells me about patriarchalism. My cause and effect is basically still not complete. So this is the cause. The cause was since royalist ideology is associated with radical patriarchalism, something happens. Historians, what happens? Let's see. Historians have been understandably puzzled. Okay, so author agrees by saying understandably. This is his agreement to this argument. He says he is understandably puzzling to see that the fact that royalist women wrote the earliest extended criticism of the absolute subordination of women in marriage. So he's saying that it is actually understandably puzzling to see why royalist women were actually criticizers of subordination of women in marriage and the earliest systematic assertion of women's rational and moral equality with men. So he's saying since royalist patriarchalism, royalist ideology is based on royalist patriarchalism, it is weird, it is difficult, understandably puzzling to see that why royalist women who are supposed to be on this side, who are supposed to agree with radical patriarchalism, are the biggest criticizers of the same. Okay, so again, I was just trying to help you understand how to read. Let me ask you this question. How many of you read the passage in this way that I am reading right now? How many of you read this passage in this way which I am reading right now? Quick yes, no guys in the chat. Would like to see your yes and no in the chat. And guys, all this effort that I'm putting in is to basically helping you understand where is that your thought process goes wrong. If you don't change these things, there is no shortcut to success. Trust me. There's no shortcut in GMAT. Someone comes and says, okay, I can actually magically make all the problems disappear. That's not going to happen. You have to do the hard work yourself. I can show you the light. I can show you the guidance. I can give you that guidance prior. Hayes says no, Vishal says no, Omkar says no, Aditi says yes. Happy to see that, Aditi. Pratik says somewhat. Okay, good. If you are in that direction, that's good. Continue in that direction, Pratik, and make sure that you do this. Some of you are saying no, some of you are saying yes, some of you are saying somewhat. But what you need to understand is if you read it in this way, if you understand the meaning in this way, Aditi says I did not understand it precisely. If you do it this way, no passage will ever be difficult for you. And you will never ever get stuck in two choices because you will understand the context clearly. RC is the easiest one in verbal to handle and it is the most difficult one at the same time. Because if you understand the context, the answer is easy. The answer is right in front of you. You pick up on the options. One passage, you read, spend time on reading that passage properly. You get 4 questions on it. You will most likely get all 4 correct. That's the best part. But the problem with the time-saving irony is when we think, okay, timing is our main issue, then we end up reading the passage very quickly. Then we end up reading it fast. We read the passage in 2 to 3 minutes. That's what I was doing when I was struggling with verbal. Then we have a rough idea of what's mentioned. The problem with the rough idea is that you end up getting to choices and you end up rereading the stuff again. So when you end up rereading that, you end up eventually rereading the passage. Where you are spending 2 minutes per question doing that, what is the benefit? You end up spending 9 to 11 minutes on the passage anyway. And the worst part is, even after spending this much time, you're not sure about the answers, whether what you're doing is correct or not. Understood? Now, people who score a 720 plus, or how I approached it, I made sure I read it properly in the first time. So even a 700 level passage, this was a 700 level passage. I spent 3 minutes reading the first para. I only required 1.5 minutes for the second para. And the reason was simple. I have understood the context. So as I move forward, it will be much more easier for me to connect things, even preempt things to that extent. So even if I spend 4.5 minutes in reading the para for the first time, I have a crystal clear understanding. And when I have a crystal clear understanding, I'm able to eliminate choices confidently. So I don't take more than 45 seconds, 30, 60 seconds max per question. So if you are doing 4 questions, you are taking a max of 4 minutes, minimum of 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes for 4 questions, and you have spent 4.5 minutes in the beginning. So your total time to solve the passage is about 8 minutes, close to 8 minutes on an average. See this, you spend 8 minutes over here instead of spending 9 to 11 minutes, and you still get a higher accuracy because you are much more confident. So that's what you need to understand. That some of you might be thinking, Piyush, if I read RCs in this way, isn't it going to take me a lot of time? It is. Initially, it is going to take you a lot of time. You can't imagine that, okay, from today onwards, whatever Piyush has told me, I'll apply that. And from tomorrow, my timing will also improve, my accuracy will also improve. No, it is not going to happen. When I was new to this approach, instead of 4.5 minutes to read the passage, I was taking 10 minutes to read the passage. But I was at least getting the questions correct. That was a good thing. That was a good sign. It kept me motivated. And now I'm able to do it in 4.5, 5 minutes. And it doesn't take a long time to get this kind of reduction. It just needs you to train your subconscious mind to do it. So if you do, let's say 20, 30 passages in this fashion, you will start seeing the reduction in time. Now, some people might come to this timing in 20, 30 passages. Some people might take 50 passages to do it. There are students who get to this after solving 70 passages. That depends on your skills. That depends on your intellect. A lot of other factors. But the good thing is this will work. We have worked with students who come from vernacular backgrounds, who are not average readers at all. Even they get the first they first see English language when they are in standard 6 or 7. Those kind of people also we have seen improving by following these methods, getting 700 plus, getting into their previous schools. You can also do that, but you need to make sure that you put in that effort to do it. Okay, understand that, guys. So the key difference that you need to focus on is not your reading speed. You should focus on your comprehension speed. Even if your reading speed is slow, my reading speed is slow today, but my comprehension speed is much better than most of the other people, and that's what matters on GMAT. So in order to build the right RC skills, you need to understand where to pause. You need to take care of complex words. And very important thing, if you were focusing, I was differentiating facts from opinions. I was also identifying the author's opinion. I was differentiating author's opinion. Why is that important? That is important because if you differentiate author's opinion, you're able to understand that, okay, this is clutter and this is the main idea. This is what the author wants to communicate. This is my main goal. This is where my focus should be. And when I say main idea, doesn't mean main idea questions. It means the main intent of the author. And in GMAT, you will see most of the questions talk about that. Most of the questions ask you, what is the author most likely to agree with? Why has the author mentioned this? What is the role of the first para? In all these questions, they are focusing on the why. They are focusing on the intent, not just the what, not just those specific details. Okay. Now, to build the skills, you have to go about thinking in the same fashion. So for example, in the GMATWhiz platform, we spent about 7 to 8 hours helping students build these skills. These all skills. There are focuses. There is focus given. So where to pause is something you learn from sentence correction. This is obviously a part of that. But this is what we teach first in RC, followed by this, then by this, then by this. And there are focused exercises in all of this. So about 60 to 70% of the time that you spend, even out of these 8 hours, you are focusing on solving questions specifically made to teach you these skills. So please make sure that you are learning in the same fashion. Okay? With that, now I think the solution is clear to you that you need to understand the context and you need to change your methodology. Let's understand how to put this into practice. So when you learn a new method, let's say you are learning this in the intended meaning approach for SC, or you're learning this reading style for RC, okay, you need to ensure that you are using this consistently. And how do you ensure that? To ensure that, you have to check the solution for every single question that you are solving and make sure that you're using the same method. So if you get the questions right, don't just assume that I've gotten it right for the right reasons. Please make sure that you go one step further. You ask yourself, have I understood the context correctly? So after solving the question, refer to solutions. Very importantly, the solution should also be giving you a logical method. So let's say you want to learn the meaning-based approach and you are referring to a solution which is like grammar focused, you will not be able to learn that approach. And there should be consistency in the methods also. So please make sure that you do that. And irrespective of whether you get it right, verify the answer and focus 80% of your attention on sentence analysis, argument analysis, or passage analysis. Idea is if you understand the context right, sooner or later you're gonna get a significant improvement in your score. And when you're doing this, note down the variances in your approach with the approach that basically the solution has followed. Okay. So for example, let me take an example. Okay. So let's say this is a CR question. I'm not asking you to solve this question. You're running on certain time. So let's say this is a CR question. There are 3 sentences in this. After solving the question, let's say this is the solution that you see. Again, if you're a GMAT student, you will get this level of detail in all the solutions, whether it is for SCCR or RC. We want you to imbibe this approach in depth. So let's say this is the solution that you see. You need to ask yourself that, okay, when I read the first line in the CR argument, how did I analyze that information? Obviously, Piyush is not going to sit with you for every question and show you how I was doing this. So what you have tried to do is you have tried to show that through the solutions. So when I read this, what is that I understood? Did I think of this sentence in this steps? Did I come to these steps when I was reading the first passage, the first line? If you did not do that, that is a mistake that you have made. You need to do that, and it is something that should happen right after you read the first line, and not just right after. As you are reading the first line, you should not read the entire argument and then think about the meaning of the first one. That's wrong, because that will take you longer to understand. Second, then you look at the second sentence and you ask yourself, okay, when I read the second sentence, did I combine this information with this information? Did I combine these pieces of information together? And did I come to this inference or not? If you did not come to this inference, again, another mistake is what you have made. Please make sure that you channelize your energy in the right direction. Then you move to the third sentence. You see, okay, what is that in there in the third sentence? Did I combine this with this part? And did I come to this inference? This is the way you analyze your solutions. This is the way you check your line of reasoning. You should not just jump to statement A, B, C, D and read the explanation there and just think, okay, this time around I made this mistake, next time I will be more careful. Don't make that error. If you are doing that, you are not learning enough from a question. Please make sure that you do this. I hope this is clear to all of you. So what should be your strategy to score a verbal 40 plus? Okay, let's now get to that. Now, I'm probably 100 minutes into the session and I'm giving you really heavy data overall. So it's gonna be difficult over here. Might be a little difficult, not gonna be difficult. So let's still try to simplify this down. So what I've done here is I've tried to showcase through like multiple ASAs that I've evaluated, the number of questions that you need to get correct to score a certain marks. For example, if you want to score a verbal 40 or more, you need to get around 15 questions correct of medium hard level. Medium hard level is basically 700 plus level questions. If you are in the score range of 36 to 37, and this is data from real ESRs. I've looked at people who have scored these through the ESRs. I have tried to understand how many 700 level questions have they gotten correct. They provide a difficulty level chart, and through that I have like back calculated these numbers. So if you look at 36 to 37, these people are getting only about 10 to 12 questions correct in medium hard. If you are looking at mid 30s, these people are getting only 4, 5, 7 questions correct. People who are around 30 are hardly getting anything in medium hard correct. They are only stuck in the medium category. So what you need to understand is that if you want to get to a verbal 40 plus, you need to be very, very consistent with hard questions. You need to be very, very consistent even with 700 level questions. So any one of you who is planning to take the GMAT scoring 740 or 750 plus, if you really want to get to that number and you really want to ensure that you are able to get there, you need to have a very high accuracy in 700 level questions. You can't just look at, okay, my overall accuracy is 80% plus, I'm good, I should take the GMAT. No, look at the accuracy in 700 level questions. Is that around 70% or above? If yes, then you are ready to take the test, and obviously take mocks before that. But that's how you look at it. Someone who is in the range of 36 to 39, if you are in that range, your problem is with inconsistency in hard questions. Your problem is not with medium questions. You're getting those right. You're inconsistent with hard questions, so your method is not wrong. Your method is correct, whatever you're using. Just a little bit of fine tuning is required, not a significant change is required, basically. On the other hand, if you're in the mid 30s, you are probably lucky with the hard questions that you're getting correct. You need to most likely change the entire methodology in depth. So there is a lot more change in your thought process that is required. You need to look at the methods, basically. Okay, that's what you need to do. Now, if you are in the 30 range, you are inconsistent in medium questions also. So ideally, I'm just showing you some solutions of all about people who are in different score range. So if you are in the 36, 39 score range, fine tune the methods, focus on consistency in hard questions, and focus on specific modules out of SCCR and RC. You don't need to work on all three of them. If you are in the 30 to 36 range, there are few concept gaps that you might have. These are low hanging fruits. Identify those, work on them. You need to change your methods completely after that. You need to focus more on practicing on the weaker area. So you need to have focus practice. On the other hand, if you're in the score range of 26 to 30, you have multiple concept gaps. You need to do complete overall of the methods. You also need to focus on application based learning, basically. Okay, so this is a general advice which I am giving you. Practicing questions alone is not going to suffice. But if you are in the scoring of 670 and more and you need personalized advice, you can always schedule a call with me one-on-one. It's always easier because there are multiple factors. Like you have to look at how much time is available with you, what is your target score, what are the resources you have utilized. Because if you have used a certain course before coming to GMATWhiz or you have used a certain book, then you would have a certain frame of mind of looking at things. And obviously, if you are using some other course, your frame of mind could be different. So you need to look at what are the things that you have done correctly, what are the things you need to change. That you can get to know from resources utilized also. You need to also understand your strengths and weaknesses and the methods that you use and your learning style. So some people learn better on their own, some people learn when they are guided better, some people need more in-depth inputs. So in case you are interested in discussing with us about how our team can help you improve your score, you can reach out to me using this link. I'm more than happy to take up the discussion. But now I'm going to give you a general advice basically to how to improve the scores. A lot of students have done this. So just to give you an idea, Rajiv was stuck at a 680 with a verbal 34 after 1.5 years of prep. That's not easy. He had probably done everything in the world to do this, to kind of at that point of time. But he improved to a score of 740 in the next about 4 5 months with a verbal 41. Shreyash, on the other hand, scored a 640 in his first attempt, was able to improve his score to a 760 with a verbal 42. Shreyash, by the way, is joining Harvard this year. Rajiv has already joined USC Marshall. Both of them have fulfilled their GMAT trains. So how Rajiv focused on was that he focused on high consistency in medium questions. At that point of time, he had high consistency in medium questions and his accuracy was poor in hard questions initially. So what he did was he focused on a two-step process. And I like his use case because he approached it very strategically. He said that, okay, let me first learn the right approach. So his thought process was that I should be able to solve a question with 100% certainty, confidence. So I should not be stuck in two choices. So he developed that confidence that I should be able to solve a question with 100% confidence within X minutes. Now this X could be 2.5, 3, it's okay. But if you are 100% certain about the answer, what that means is that your approach is perfect now. You have fixed your approach. Now you can work on efficiencies on reducing your time. So the second step that he took was he started working on that X minutes to bring it down to 1.5 8 minutes. And he also focused on reducing the exam-based anxiety through meditation, and he reduced the number of study hours. And he was able to get to a 740 plus. Again, I'm just giving you overall some key pointers. There are a lot of things that Rajiv did. Similarly, Shreyas focused on his weak areas basically, and you can see the kind of improvement that he had from 640 to 760, improved his verbal by 7 points in this situation. So what should be a sequence of study? So ideally, again, let me skip this part. If you're a new student, you should focus on SC, then CR, then RC. But if you're a student who has studied already, you need to look at your scores in SCCR and RC. And if it is more than 70, or I would say just to be on the safer side, you can make it at 80% also. If it is percentile that you're focusing on, it is okay to be 70. But if you're looking at accuracy, it should be a minimum of 15, in my opinion. So identify your strong and weak areas. For example, in this case, CR and RC are the weak areas of the student and SC is the strong area. So I would recommend working on SC later. But as I said, the Shev's case, we did a different thing altogether. So it also depends on how you're solving SC questions. If you're still using grammar to solve SC questions, you're not focusing on meaning and the context, that is something which will interfere with CR and RC too. So you need to make sure that you work on SC first in that case. So learn the right approach for your weak areas, understand the method, solve 15 questions one at a time. One at a time is very important because you're new to the method then. So take one question at a time, review the explanation right away, and see if you have understood the method correctly. So what you are doing over here is learning the right approach. Okay. So whenever you learn a topic, learn concepts, learn the approach, and then you practice questions. Okay. Now, how do you go to the next step? How do you master each module? So after you learn the right approach, then you master the approach on each and every topic, basically, that is there in that every topic. For example, in SC, you have to apply that approach for verb tenses, pronouns, modifiers, and then you take 4 or 5 sectional tests to find it. Okay, so that is how it should be. Again, I wanted to cover this part also. So quickly, timing strategy for verbal should be this. You should not follow a linear timing strategy. But again, since we are very much behind the schedule, I am going to give you a link to a timing strategy session that I have taken in the past. You can go through this. This is like a very detailed session on how to time yourself during the GMAT exam, how to place yourself during the test. So this is something which can help you in understanding that. So you can go through this webinar in depth to understand the entire algorithm. I've covered this part over there as well. All right, guys. So this is about the session today. I'm opening it up for an open-ended Q&A. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to ask me now. Now is the time to ask me. If you want to connect with me later on, you can connect with me on this email ID which is there on your screen. You can also connect with me on this WhatsApp number. I'm more than happy. So Tumpa, you have the email ID on the screen. In case you want to watch Shreyash's interview live, like that we conducted, and how he scored the 760 on GMAT, I just shared the link. And anyone of you who wants to check out GMATWhiz, you can go to our website, do that. I'm going to give you a direct link as well over here. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, do let me know. I'm here for another 5 minutes or so to answer your questions. Okay, so I don't see any questions till now. I hope you guys liked this session. So do let me know what did you like about this session. In case you want to give me any feedback, I just tried a little differently today. Generally, I focus a lot more on the strategy part, and I focus on what to do, what not to do based on numbers and all of that. Today, I felt that I should probably go back to my like old days, and I can look at how I was worked as a student, what was the change in my thought process. So I tried to do something different, try to help you understand from a student's perspective what needs to change. And I went more into the how angle than the why angle or the what angle. So that's what I tried to do. So let me know how was the session basically. How did you find the session? Just a feedback from you guys. We really like this. I'd love to continue this in the other sessions that I take. So thank you, Vishal. Let me know like how did you feel about the session, and if you guys like the session, do give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends who are having issues with verbal. And I hope I'm able to help more people get out of this issue and score well on GMAT. What sort of reading material will improve verbal? So Tumpa, more important than reading material is how you read stuff. So first improve that and then focus on reading material. Any standard newspaper where editorial sections are very good overall, so that is something you should focus on. You can read specific novels in specific areas. So for example, if philosophy is something that you don't like, probably you can read novels on philosophy. I did that. I did read a book called The History or the Story of Philosophy. That was a book by Will Durant. That helped a lot. So, but yeah, first thing is make sure that you're kind of improving the reading style. Okay, so that says thank you so much for the informative session. It was really helpful. I'm happy to know that. Any other feedback, guys? I'm open to feedback as well. This was something new I tried, so just want to hear from you. Good. Thank you so much for the lovely session. Super helpful, Sensei. I'm happy to hear that too. I'm really glad. It showed me my weak areas and gave insights about things I was doing wrong. So happy, Vishal. Thank you. Thank you so much for these comments. Uh, I was just hoping that the experiment goes well, and I'm glad to see that you guys found that insights helpful. Okay, Diego says, I'm 3 days from the exam and I'm still struggling with verbal section. What do you suggest me to do in the next 3 days? Okay, I don't recommend any change in the next 3 days, honestly. If you're still struggling with the verbal section, uh, I probably wouldn't have said this, but yeah, take the exam with a free mind. Don't have any baggage on you. Do the best that you can. Just don't think anything about it. Just go lightly. Whenever you feel pressured, take a break in between. Relax, calm down, and focus on the question at hand. And then, after your exam is done, if you still need help, reach out to me. Okay? We'll talk about it then. Next 3 days, I don't want you to change anything, I don't want to do that. Okay. So here's the link. You can actually use this link later on in case you need that after the exam is done. You can connect. Akhilesh, yes, the recording will be available on GMAT YouTube channel. You can just watch it. It should be available in another 5-7 minutes or so. Samagra, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Uh, Great, guys. I'm really happy that at least those of you who commented on the feedback gave a good feedback. I'm not sure if someone had any other feedback for me, but yeah, you can feel free to write to me later on as well. If you need any help with your GMAT preparation, we will love to do so for you. At GMATWhiz, we specialize in helping people improve their scores, and that's why our average score improvement has been the highest in the industry. So do let me know in case you need to connect with me. You can utilize these links and the options available on there. All the best from my side. This is Piyush shining off for the day. I didn't realize I was not showing my face. So all the best, guys. I hope the discussion was really helpful to you. Implement this advice and remember, there's no shortcut. And if you're just doing hard work, you're just doing practice. That's not the solution either. You have to find the balance. You have to do smart work. You have to understand how to place yourself in the author's place, how to read things well, and how to actually utilize your focus when you're reading the passages. So all the best from my side. It is Piyush Virwala signing off for the day. Have a good evening, good night, or good morning wherever you are, guys. Bye bye.